Hi, Doug Andrew again. In this IUL Insiders training, I love to give you some insights into ways that you can help your clients understand and get it. And so oftentimes, as you begin to educate a prospective client, they will ask the question, well, how can I tell if you or an advisor is going to be able to structure this correctly? An advisor should be able to answer at least 14 critical questions that are outlined in the book. And so before I go through those, and I'm going to see how well you do, because I don't want you cheating, I want to see if you can answer these off the cuff from what you've learned so far. Because if you give the laser fund to a prospective client, let me just tell you, this is probably the best marketing piece you could ever use. This is like a permanent business card. When I give somebody a book, 10, 15 years later, I actually had one gentleman, a CPA, who said, I had your book on my nightstand for over 10 years, meaning to read it. And when he finally read it, he goes, oh, I could have kicked myself. The testimonial is on my YouTube channel. And so you never know. If I gave him a business card, it would have been in, file 13 a long time ago. You give somebody a book and they just have a hard time throwing the book away. It sits up on the shelf. So it's like a permanent business card. Now, frankly, if I took this book and I tied it on a dog's tail and sent the dog around town, I'm convinced somebody is going to stop that dog and read the thing. And when they read it, pretty soon they're going to want this. Now, it's not really that easy, but I have found that every 50 books or so that I place out there to people, at least 1 out of 50 reads the book and calls us and ends up becoming a client. Hello? Well, I have found that every 30 books that I place into the right demographic of people who are looking for the information, not just a book, but they're actually searching for it. So in my click funnel, when people go in, they're actually looking to get a copy of the book. And so it's really about education. I can, sell the book for $20, but I would rather give them the education, because then they'll want something they didn't know they wanted. And so I have them have some skin in the game. If you just give it away, they don't value it. If they have some skin in the game, if they contribute $5.95 towards the shipping and handling, because sometimes the shipping and handling is a little bit north of that. But if they have some skin in the game and they contribute $5.95, I know they're buying into it and they'll probably read it, which is true. And then they read the book, and I find that at least 1 out of 30 will end up wanting to have us implement a laser fund for them. So use this as your bird dogging tool. And pretty soon with certain marketing, you can get down to 1 out of 20 books. When I taught training back in 2003 to 2007, most advisors told me that out of the 20 books that they would place each month, they would sell at least 1 universal life insurance policy, because they were picky who they gave the 20 books to. The more picky who you give it to, the more your sales or closing ratios will be, because you're simply educating the people. Now, I'm going to go through, first of all, before I go through these 14 questions, sort of a quiz here live, and I'm going to talk about some of the biggest reasons why most advisors don't understand this and when it doesn't work. And I'm going to tell a little story here, because this cartoon was actually recreated by one of these advisors that I had trained back in 2003 or 2004. And I used to tell the story that when I first started in 1974, I would send out this one-page letter. And on the letter, I had the rights to this cartoon. And on this cartoon, it was similar to this. Now, this person paid an artist online in the UK to reenact the cartoon in a different way with my caricature up here. But this cartoon was so effective because, as depicted here, it showed this salesman outside of this tent of this army commander. Here's this guy, and he's got his sword and his shield, and he has his army here with their spears. And here I am over here with automatic machine guns and ammo and weaponry, and I'm trying to get his attention. You can't believe how many times I felt like this. The market goes down and our business booms just because we do get people's attention. Hey, but sometimes on the radio, when the market crashes, I get on and I go, none of our clients have lost a dime this year. I know you probably lost 40%, but it's going to happen again. Do you want to learn how to not lose? Like our clients, they didn't lose a dime. It's like a disaster has to happen before you get people's attention. What do we have a lack of, a dearth of in America? People's time and attention. And so when I can get their time and their attention, I take it seriously. Sometimes we have to wait until a disaster before people pay attention, because when everything's going hunky-dory in the market and everything, they don't pay attention to you because they don't have to worry about anything. But I feel like this guy over here, okay, hey, I've got this automatic machine gun, I've got this weaponry. You can fight the battles in life. What battles? College funding. How do I save for college? Emergencies. How do I manage my real estate? How do I have working capital for my business? How do I not outlive my money in retirement? I've told you all these battles people fight in life. How am I going to have the money to do this? What's the best place to put my money? These are the battles people are fighting in life. And I'm sitting there saying, I have the weaponry, I have the machine, so you will win these battles. And yet I feel like, sometimes, I don't have any time to see some crazy salesman right now. I've got a battle to fight. So you will feel like that sometimes. And so I use that cartoon to get people's attention so that they can relate and they'll actually give me their time and attention. Now, when we educate people, we try to use diagrams, and when you engage with us at IUL Insiders for some of the graphics, these are some of the things that we simplify. Indexed Universal Life, 4 foundational pillars. I use this for years. It's so simple. Number 1, liquidity and safety. Okay. Number 2, tax-free growth, tax-free distribution. Third pillar, okay, participation in market gains, but not losses. That's indexing. Over here, okay, automatic system of lock-in of the previous gains, lock in and reset. So I just picked some of those 4 main pillars or features, and people look at that and they go, ooh, I want my financial plan to have those strong pillars. And it's very obvious that where they have their money, they don't have those pillars. See how simple that is? So in an audience, many times live, I will say, how many of you, now be honest with me, how many of you have been sitting there thinking while I've been telling you this, I've always thought that insurance in general was a poor investment. Come on, raise your hands. Now, a third, a half, 60% raise their hands because I told them, be honest. And I go, actually, we agree. And they go, what? You agree? Because it's not an investment, okay? It's a tax-free insurance policy, okay? So now they understand that. It's an insurance policy, and unfortunately, most insurance is not structured correctly nor funded properly to accomplish these goals. So then they go, oh, I got to make sure, because they're thinking, oh, my nephew has an insurance license. My brother-in-law has one. I'll just go to them. Well, I can tell you horror stories of people who have done that, and maybe I've already shared some of them in the episodes that you've watched. But I've had numerous people come and they hear me on the radio, and I say, wow, the last 7 years, it's been incredible. People have been rebalancing and using indexing, and they've averaged a little over 10%. So $500,000 of cash value 7 years ago should be worth $1 million today. And they look at their policy and they go, my $500,000 is only worth $250,000. Where's the other $750,000? And some of them strip their pride and they come in and they say, how come mine's not worth double? And it takes about 30 seconds, to be honest. And I flip through and I go, Yeah, this is one of the companies I use. This is one of the products I own. But who designed this for you? Oh, it was our nephew. He has an insurance license. Or it was our brother-in-law. And I went, ooh, they didn't know what they were doing. You could have been earning 11 and netting 10. Instead, you were earning 11 or less. You didn't rebalance because they didn't invite you to come back in and do an annual review. But even if you earned 11, you would have only netted 4 because the cost of the insurance is so high because they didn't know how to structure it under TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA guidelines. That was an expensive relationship with your nephew. See, maybe they did it because the nephew gave him an under-the-table, kickback. Don't make that mistake. Make sure you go to the right person. So what are some of the biggest reasons? I ask people, what could go wrong? And I go down, well, if it's not structured properly under TEFRA and DEFRA, if it's not funded correctly, okay, if you don't fill up your bucket, if it's not designed in accordance with IRS guidelines to be tax-free under TAMRA, Section 72E, 7702, and 101A, if you use the wrong product, if you choose the wrong company. But guess what the number one reason is when it goes wrong? The last one. If the advisor is not proficient. And that makes me sick because they go through all this and they know what they want, but then they assume any licensed life insurance agent can help them do it right. And that is so far from the truth. So how do we do that? I created a proficiency exam back in 2008, 100 questions plus 30 essay. And after that, I had 3,000 insurance agents, financial advisors come through my training, but many of them didn't use it. They just, oh, Doug, this is too complicated. We don't have time to educate people. What they don't know won't hurt them. We're not going to have another major crash. This was just before 2008, by the way. And so if they didn't use it, they would lose it. And so after 3 or 4 years of not being involved in it, I gave them the proficiency exam and they didn't even score 30, 40, or 50%. Well, to be honest with you, most financial advisors that we hear on radio and TV wouldn't even score 30% because they wouldn't understand 70% of the questions. How can you get the answer right when you wouldn't even understand the question? I can stump most financial advisors in less than 30 seconds by talking about TEFRA, DEFRA, TAMRA. I'm going to give you 14 questions here in just a second that if you ask them, if somebody asks you these, you better know the answers or they will realize from the book, beware. So this is extremely important. So as you go through this, I've used the metaphor of the baking soda. Don't focus on what it is, focus on what it does. But as you answer questions, in the book, if somebody is reading through the left brain section, we have 14 questions at the end of the chapter here, and I had it down here just a second. Let me find it. And in this is telling the reader of the book, how can you tell if an advisor understands how to do this right? And it's on page 195. So it's called the Laser Ready Test. So let's just take a moment and go through these and see if you know the answers. This is what you should be able to answer if the client asks you this question. What is TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA, and how do they impact my policy? Now, your financial advisor should be able to answer this off the cuff. Not, I'll look it up. Let me make sure. No, they should answer it off the cuff. If you do this all the time, you should know that just like that, off the cuff. Okay, if they say, let me check on that, or I'll research it, that's a warning sign. How about this one? Explain to me Internal Revenue Code, sections 72E, 7702, and 101A. Okay, again, if your financial advisor isn't able to explain those 3 sections off the cuff, beware. So make sure you know that. The next one, what's a guideline single premium? Or you could say, what's a GSP? You should know that, but see, your client will know that. So what is that? The total amount you will put into a fully funded policy to self-insure your policy, and it's calculated on during the first 11 years, but you don't have to take 11 years. You can put it in 5 years under TAMRA. Okay. So here's the next one. What factors will the insurance company consider when gauging the size of my policy besides the guideline single premium? Now, they should be able to say, well, that is based upon your age, your gender, and your health status. I mean, you should know that just like that. If you don't, that's a warning sign, and I've told them that in the book. Okay. What size policy would someone have, on average, who is a healthy 60-year-old male? Now, I've given you this example, I don't know how many times in this IUL training. A 60-year-old male with a GSP of 500,000. You should know that fast, 1,250,000 or thereabouts. Now, you should know that for a 50-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 30-year-old. If you don't know those off the cuff, the approximate amount of insurance required under TEFRA and DEFRA, if you say, oh, I don't know, let me check it out, let me look it up, and you sit there for 5 minutes running an illustration, that's a warning sign. I'm telling the reader, you don't do this enough to make me comfortable that you know what you're doing, okay? Next, what are the rules for perfecting a modified endowment contract or perfecting a MEC? So remember, you want to compare the answers to what I said in here. You can perfect a MEC within a 60-day window after the policy anniversary from when you created a modified endowment contract. Now, a person who knows this, who does this day in and day out, knows that and should answer it, again, right off the cuff. How about this one? How can an insurance company earning 5% on their general account portfolio afford to credit a policy 6, 7, 8, 9% or more, okay? People will ask you that question if they've read the book, and you need to be able to say, well, an insurance company can afford to pay you 7 or 8 or 9 because you've linked to an index, even though the insurance company is only earning maybe 5% on their general account portfolio rate, which leads to the next question here. So how can an insurance company earning 5 afford to pay you 7 or 8, but allow you to pull out 9 or 10% a year without depleting principal? That's by using the participating or index loans where you're borrowing money, let's say at 5%, and they can continue to credit you 7, 8, or 9%. See, a lot of people, if you ask that to a normal financial advisor, they would sit there with this deer in the headlight look at you. Okay, how about this? How can policyholders experience 1 to 2% higher payouts? Well, again, like I just said, it's by using the arbitrage. The difference between what the insurance company is charging you to call it a loan and the interest they're crediting you on the money you did not withdraw, it's still earning interest. And this is a very powerful concept that you need to be aware of, because I'm telling the reader in the book, you need to ask whoever is proposing this or whoever you think can do this for you these questions. Okay, here's another one. Who runs your policy illustrations? Now, if they say, well, I'm not very good at it, and so I have the clerical people at the home office do it. Do I tell you this? Clerical people at the home office of the insurance company generally do not know how to do this correctly. You need to have an illustration prepared by somebody who understands the objectives of the client. You're the one who understands that, and you're the one who needs to put it in. I always ran the illustrations and designed the plan. I never delegated that to somebody else and then presented it. I wanted to know where every single number came from before I sat down with that client, and so I wanted to get into the nitty-gritty, roll up my shirt sleeves, and create the illustration myself. How about this one? If I maximum fund a laser fund over the life of the policy, what is the expected net internal rate of return likely to be? Now we're talking about IRR, okay? Compared to the gross crediting rate. Now, if they do it correctly, the answer is, well, usually within 1% of the gross rate of return. If you earn 11, you ought to net 10. If you earn 9, you ought to net 8. If you earn 7, you ought to net 6. If you earn 6, you ought to net 5. If you earn in a given year 25, you ought to net 24. You ought to know that answer. And if the illustration doesn't show that retroactive back to day one, you have not designed it, you have not squeezed down the death benefit tight enough under TEFRA and DEFRA to accomplish that goal. Now, let's get down the home stretch here. Come and just tell me, how long have you been structuring these types of policies? Now, look for the body language. If they hem and haw, that will tell you something. Do you have access to several different types of index policies? And how many have you put in place? Okay. So how many have you put into place? How about this question? I've been asked this hundreds, if not thousands of times. How many of these do you own? In other words, do you walk your talk? How many of these, do you put your own money in these? Now, I have advisors that have never owned one. Oh, well, I haven't made enough money yet. Oh, wait a minute. They haven't made enough money to start socking away $100, $200, $500 a month, and they are trying to advise you on what to do with your money? Danger. You better own one yourself, and you better walk your talk before you start telling other people to do with their money something that you're not even doing yet with your money. I don't care how much you believe in it. You ought to be owning one yourself. Next, do you specialize in maximum funded index universal life policies, or do you handle other types of insurance as well, like property and casualty, homeowners insurance, automobile insurance, health insurance? If that's what they do, that's why most agents who came through my training that worked with, companies like State Farm or Farmers or Allstate, they loved to learn about it, but at the end of the day, they said, Doug, will you be our insurance agent for Universal Life? Because we don't have this good of a product, and I don't understand it. And if I have any clients, I want to point them to you. So it's sort of like I'm the insurance agent's insurance agent. I'm the doctor's doctor. And so you ought to be specializing just in that. And when they ask you, do you sell all kinds of insurance and do this, that, and the other? You're the jack of all trades. To me, that's a little bit of a warning signal, okay? How many insurance companies do you represent? If it's only one, if it's captive, they may not have the flexibility to give you a comparison between different companies and features. And so usually we're appointed to 20 or 30 different companies. We usually have 5 or 6 that are our favorite, but based upon their objectives, what we do is we already know which 1 or 2 companies we should show them because we don't want to confuse them. We say, we've run one with this company and one with this company, one with this policy and one with this. Don't give them any more than 2 to 4 choices and then say, this one looks like it will perform best in the long run based upon the assumptions. But you want to make sure you're not just this one company person and you're a captive agent. The last question is insurance your sole profession or is it a part-time endeavor? Now, frankly, I would like somebody who it's their full-time focus because they're sharp. If I'm going to have heart surgery, if I'm going to fly in a private plane, if I ask the person, so how many times have you flown a plane? Well, I've flown a dozen times now. I try to go out and fly once a year. I would not get in that plane. If I get on the operating table and I said, hey, surgeon, can I just ask you, how many of these surgeries have you done? And he goes, wow, I was wondering if you're going to ask. This is my second one, but I did go to medical. No. You want somebody who's sort of been around the block, who makes it their full-time profession, who isn't a barber by day and a financial planner by night. I'm not saying that you can't move from one profession to another, but if I'm going to take out a max-funded insurance policy, if that's who I'm going to get it from, I want to make sure some supervisor who's been around the block and understands it, checks it out to make sure it was designed correctly. That's all I'm saying. And so these are some of the critical questions that I think you need to be prepared to answer, because if you hand this book to a prospect and they read it, and they do read that chapter, they will likely sit down and ask you 1, 2, maybe all of those questions. You want to be able to look them straight in the eye, off the cuff, and answer them truthfully, the right answer to those questions. So that's what can go wrong, but if you know what to do to make it right, you will put them at ease and your business will flourish.